The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. Working with award-winning professors, Cronkite students learn news reporting, social media, shooting and editing videos, and producing content for communications industries. Cronkite's 15 professional programs give students the opportunity to cover critical issues throughout the U.S. and beyond. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Thalohungva. Here are the headlines from Indian Country Today. Montana's governor is making it harder to reintroduce bison back into areas of the state. Tribal leaders in Montana are criticizing the governor's bison plan and are asking for help from the Biden administration. Governor Greg Gianforte cut out a bison management plan, which would have allowed the animals to be restored in more areas of the state. Members of the legislature's American Indian Caucus say they were not consulted before the plan was canceled. The caucus sent a letter to the Interior Secretary, Deb Haaland, asking for help to craft a new plan. Ranchers in Montana have long opposed efforts to restore the bison because they fear the cattle would have to compete for public grazing space. Gianforte says he ended the plan after state officials reached a settlement with property owners that had challenged the former plan in court. The settlement blocks wildlife officials from adopting a similar bison restoration plan for the next 10 years. The United States Department of Agriculture is extending its free lunch program through the 2022 school year. Normally, families must meet income qualifications to qualify for the program, but as the pandemic closed schools, the USDA eased restrictions. Schools are now able to distribute meals to all students at pickup and drop-off locations. And under the USDA's food distribution program on Indian reservations, Native children are eligible for school meals. The program provides food to income-eligible households living on and off tribal lands. Under last year's CARES Act, the USDA also boosted food assistance for tribes during the pandemic. North Carolina lawmakers are reintroducing a bill to help the Lumbee people gain federal recognition. In 2019, a bill was introduced and passed the state House without any objection, but failed in the Senate. The bill's new name is the Lumbee Recognition Act of 2021. The Lumbees have been recognized by the state since 1885. However, the Lumbees have not submitted a petition for acknowledgement to go through the Department of Interior's recognition process, according to the OneFeather.com newspaper. President Biden has said he supports federal recognition for the Lumbees. The results of the 2020 U.S. Census have been released, and there are some losers, winners, and a few near misses. The count is used to determine each state's representation in the U.S. House and the Electoral College. In 2 instances, the Native vote is credited with helping a state either gain or keep a congressional seat in close calls. Counting U.S. residents in 2020 was challenging for the Bureau. The pandemic and record-setting wildfires and hurricane season disrupted the count. A last-minute attempt by the former president to add a citizenship question to the census form confused people. The U.S. Supreme Court excluded that question, saying it was unconstitutional. You can read the story on our website, IndianCountryToday.com. Just search for the headline, Census Winners, Losers. For more than 10 years, Sharon Day has walked with a purpose. Every step she takes is a step to raise awareness for water. She's traveled from Mississippi to Arizona, leading water walks and living the saying, water is life. In Arizona last year, Day led water walkers 160 miles along the Rio Salado in a walk sponsored by the Museum of Walking. Karina Dominguez caught up with her.
Sharon Day is a grandmother, artist, musician, and writer. Among her favorite titles is Water Walker. She led her first water walk in 2011.
Everything has a spirit, and the water has a spirit. And so when we gather that water and we carry it from the mouth of the river to the confluence with another river, all the while we're carrying it, we're speaking to that water spirit, we're singing to it, we love you, and we're grateful to you, and we respect you. And indeed, we apologize for all the harm.
Her copper bucket has cones from a jingle dress, which is worn during a traditional dance performed for healing. It's a reminder of why she's walking.
What we're doing is to heal the water.
Day has led over 20 water walks, and she's even recorded songs that are prayers for the water.
It's unbelievable to me today that we have to have resistance. We have to protect, the very source that gives all of us life.
Her favorite part is fellow water walkers becoming relatives along the journey. Day's sense of responsibility to the water resonates with people. She has 3 water walks planned this upcoming year. At the confluence of the Gila River and Salt River, in Phoenix, Karina Dominguez, Indian Country Today.
Sharon Day will be featured in an exhibit at the Minneapolis Institute of Art that runs from May 6th through September 12th. And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today. I'm Patty Thalahungva. When we come back, what are you doing for Arbor Day?
We'll talk with one man who's been planting thousands of trees on the Oglala Lakota Nation with the help of a few friends. It's spring, and after a long winter, folks are getting out and enjoying the weather. Planting gardens and planting trees. Arbor Day is April 30th this year. Henry Redcloud knows a thing or two about planting trees. Starting May 3rd, his group will be planting 35,000 trees on the Oglala Nation in South Dakota. In 5 years, partnership with Trees, Water, and People, it's planted 165,000 trees. Welcome, Henry.
Good morning, all. Very honored to be here.
35,000 trees. How do you do that?
So we have 20 tree planters. Each tree planter planting 200 pine seedlings per day. So it goes by pretty quickly, about 15 days, 16 days. If we don't get any more snow, or if it doesn't rain, then we can have it done in about 15 days.
Let me pull back the lens a little bit and ask you why it's so important that we plant trees.
Trees are so important that, they do so much good things for us. Watershed, wildlife, sanctuary, taking bad carbon, making good carbon. It's something that we all should be doing all the time. And this month, the Arbor Day, we all should be planting maybe a dozen trees, per family. So then we can start, protecting, doing our part as human beings to ensure for, future, generations to have the quality air, water, and all the important things that we need to sustain ourselves.
I think a lot of people don't realize how much treescape we've lost. I've looked at satellite photos from like the 1950s and the 1960s, and you see a very different planet with the number of trees out there that are just gone. And so getting that going again is really critical.
It's very important. I saw that as well. Here on the Pine Ridge, we sit on 2.2 million acres. And back in the day when we first arrived, the ancestors first arrived here, they called it Pine Ridge because there were so much pines everywhere. Over the years, with wildfire and all that, we start losing quite a bit of pine trees. So our effort is to reforestate that and bring back the pine trees. There's no better thing when local people start to manage their own resources. It's really important. And
I think of as a little kid watching pine trees in Fort Hall, Idaho, and they start off little, and then as you become an adult, they're much larger and larger and larger. And so it's almost a multi-generational thing as well.
They sit there, they grow year after year. All of these trees that we grew so far and have out there in our reforestation program, long after I'm gone, the trees are still going to be there. and they'll start to reseed themselves, and you know, things are going to be good. Then I'm going to feel good. Once I leave, I know that I did my part. So it's very important that we all get out there and start to plant trees wherever that we can. Get our communities together, get our families together, and go out and plant a few trees. It would be the best thing that a person can do to combat climate change. We're in that era where things are starting to change, and things are it's, you know, terrible. Here we are, last week we had a snowfall, and it should have quit. The first snowstorm came 7 months ago, and last week we had another snowstorm. So I'm hoping that we're done with snow, and looking towards the rains to come and help us, and help last year's trees to get really established. So yeah, it's we're having a great time, a happy, awesome time doing this here on the res. We've been helping other tribes do the same thing, helping them within their how to plant a tree, how to care for a tree once receiving it from a nursery, and then how to plant it for success.
I'm going to switch gears here. You're framed by a solar panel, and you do a lot of work with renewable energy. Maybe talk to us about the importance of that and what you're doing.
I've been doing solar for since 1997. 2003, I went and opened the doors to Lakota Solar Enterprises. 2008, I went and opened Redcloud Renewable Energy Center, working with tribes, creating economic opportunities through rooftop solar. We're accredited a technical institute here, Redcloud Renewable Energy Center. We offered a national certification, and we're creating green teams. We're creating green warriors, you know, solar warriors, solar warriorettes, and having them be the point man within their respective tribes. We're now working with over 60 tribes on their solar clean energy projects, creating multiple jobs, offsetting, you know, carbon, lessening our carbon moccasin print, and creating, ultimately, you know, creating a sustainable life, you know, coexisting with the earth again. Our base foundation as the Oglala Lakota, our language, our culture, our ceremony, our song, our dance is all based around Ampetui, the sun. So it's this new way of honoring the old way and then becoming sustainable, coexisting with the earth again. And so we had over 700 students come through our program since our existence. And so we're excitedly looking to the next coming years. As everybody's aware, we need to be going to clean energy. Several weeks back, last month, we had the rolling blackouts. We got to start, you know, thinking what we can do to start ensuring that this doesn't happen.
I noticed that President Biden, when he talks about climate change, almost always talks about the prospect of new jobs. And this is really where you've been at for the last 7 years. How do we take advantage of this time to create all these new jobs, especially on tribal communities?
You know, renewable energies happening so fast and the workforce isn't there. So this is, you know, really quickly happening with the Biden-Harris administration. NREL, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, has done a study, a feasibility study within Indian countries, 574 recognized federal tribes, and they found that 61 gigs of clean energy can be produced out of all of these tribes. So, and then he's got a wonderful, you know, plan, $1.9 trillion, and 40% of that's coming to Indian country. So we we are ready here, and we're ready to help, people to get established, to transition on over into clean energy.
Clean energy and jobs. That's quite a prospect. Thank you, Henry Redcloud.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And I would like to just for everybody in the listening area, please continue to do what you're doing. Move forward, plant trees, get involved in some clean energy and start moving forward, because we don't want to be known as the generation that didn't do anything. We want to move forward, and we need to unite. We need to come together. We need to move on this quickly, because the last 30 years is very terrible. We were at their tipping point of, climate change. So very honored to be here. Keep on doing what you're doing, and let's move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll be right back. John Tahsuda III has worked as the staff director for the Senate Indian Affairs Committee, and he served as Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs. John Tahsuda joins us now to talk about land into trust. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me again.
So the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, announced last week there'd be new procedures for land into trust. And that's really one of those issues that there's a division between Democrats and Republicans on how they approach land into trust. And this is clear by this new process. Maybe talk about from your perspective.
Certainly. So first off, I think it's pretty telling that every new administration that comes in announces something to do with land into trust in their first days in office. So that does, for those who don't live it every day, that tells you how important land into trust is for tribes and for federal policy for tribes. So, I think you hit it right. I mean, it's important to note that land into trust is understood to be important by every administration when they come in. And, it's a foundational aspect for the tribes, both for their government activities and also for their economic activities. So it's they understand it's a very important part of policy that they enact. But how they go about it is often different. And I think really the question of process is the important one to look at here, and how you view it. And I would say, early on during the last administration, we took a look and were concerned, and tribal leaders, among the early questions they asked us to address was why it was taking so long to get fee into our lands into trust. And so we took a look at the process and made what we thought were a couple adjustments to the process that would make the system operate better. And so that's something we did. If Secretary Haaland has a better way to go about it, that would be great. But it looks to me like what she's doing is kind of going back to where the system was before we made some changes. And so I'll be interested to see how that works out for them.
And this is one of those issues that tribal individual members often have a different point of view than the tribal government itself, because the tribal government basically has the protection of trust land, whether or not it is trust land, whereas individuals are subject to regulations and state control and all kinds of other issues involved.
True. And you have individual ownership and trust as well. And particularly when it comes to how they want to use their land, oftentimes individual members of tribes that have individual allotments differ from the tribe on how they want to conduct activities on their property. And that's something that's a real challenge for the department, because they have trust responsibilities to both the tribe and to the individual. And sometimes, when those two conflict, the department is in the middle on how to deal with those issues. But at the end of the day, the ultimate hope is that the individual, if it's an individual allotment or if it's the tribe's land, that they're able to get the highest use out of it that they want to get out of it, whether it's for housing or economic development or anything else.
Is there a prospect one day, maybe this is fanciful, of finding a resolution that survives administrations where tribes and the government come together and say, this is where we want to go, and doesn't matter who's in Washington?
Well, that's a very good question, a very good point. We did take a look in the last administration at some ideas, and some tribal leaders, have given thought to this. They have some good ideas, on something that would be probably considered a good idea regardless of which administration it is. And I would say probably at the top of that list is the notion that if a parcel of land that's in fee and the tribe wants to take it into trust is located within reservation boundaries, then maybe the process ought to be near automatic. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. I mean, obviously, you ultimately have to have a federal action, that the taking it into federal title, into trust. But a lot of the things that delay the action have to do with paper processing and with the environmental reviews. And so, part of the ideas that were floated in the last administration were whether, if it's on reservation, whether we could make the paperwork very, very simple, and really, as part of the trust responsibility, say that unless there is a known environmental issue that must be addressed, that the tribe would really be responsible for the environmental activity and reviews before anything happens there. So there really shouldn't be much NEPA review before the land goes into trust. And when it's on reservation, that's well within the United States trust responsibilities to the tribe, and we have a long history of self-governance to turn those activities over to the tribe. So I think that's one really solid idea that I think across the board people would support.
Well, thank you. We'll have to leave it there.
Thank you, Bart.
Many people may not realize that Alaska is home to 229 tribes, and there's a move now to get the state to formally recognize them. Joaqlin Estus is our national correspondent based in Anchorage, and she joins us now to tell about this effort. Welcome, Joaqlin.
Hello, thanks for having me. So Alaska is, it's not that unusual, I don't think. There are 11 states that recognize federally recognized tribes, and Alaska is not one of them. So there's a House bill making its way through the legislature that would change that. And the reason that people are pushing for it is that, well, first of all, there was a lawsuit in 1999, and the judge ruled that Alaska tribes should be recognized by the state of Alaska. So that's the law, but policy is set by the legislature and by governors. And that changes a lot over time, and especially from one governor to the next. So people would like to see that, to have a standard state policy that they can count on through various administrations, and getting state recognition, people hope would do that.
Well, and it opens up so many other possibilities. For example, if there's a government to government process, agency can meet with agency and exchange information and basically do business.
That's right. And there could be a lot more cooperation. So as you look back at how different governors have treated tribes, there have been some that not only didn't recognize tribes, but they sued them over and over. And Sean Parnell is the one that comes to mind immediately over lawsuits. So there are some bodies of law that are very well established as far as tribes go. And one of them is the Indian Child Welfare Act. And it's, there are hundreds of cases and, laws and regulations related to it. And Sean Parnell kept suing tribes over that. And that, and that was just part of what he was doing. He was, he manifested this disdain, I think some people would call it, for tribes in a lot of different ways. Then came Governor Walker. He not only had an Alaska Native, Byron Malott, who was Tlingit, as his lieutenant governor, but he really reached out to tribes, and the Walker administration issued a legal memorandum saying we have basically giving state recognition to Alaska tribes. So House Bill 123 is making its way through the legislature. Tribes supporters are also saying something else that would do that. The bill is very straightforward. It just says the state recognizes there are federally recognized tribes in Alaska, and their tribes have a special relationship to the federal government. And that's all it says. Tribes, supporters also say, though, that what the bill would do is overcome this feeling that what the state is saying is you don't exist, you don't have any authority or value. And, Alaska Native history is not taught in the schools. There's a lot of people who you would expect to know more, but actually don't. And then there's racism. So people are thinking that at minimum, state recognition would be would have some symbolic significance. That is, it would say, yes, we honor you and we recognize you. And so it would do that at minimum, and that's what people are hoping for.
Thank you so much, Joaqlin Estus.
You bet, my pleasure.
And you can read her story on our website. It's called Alaska Legislators Consider State Recognition of Tribes at IndianCountryToday.com. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. Thank you for watching. We will be back with another edition tomorrow. I'm Mark Trahan.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
Indian Country Today is produced at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
This is Indian Country Today.